To get the Crime Writers on After Show right now, go to patreon.com/partners in crime media.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And in this episode, a community of online detectives watched him go from animal cruelty to murder. We'll rewind to 2020 for our review of the much discussed and hard to watch documentary, Don't Fuck with Cats. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Kevin.
Rebecca, you have not watched season 2 of The Mole on Netflix yet, have you?
Oh, my God. Well, as of this taping, I'm sure as of the time this drops, I will have. But as of this taping, no.
So you don't know who's in the cast?
No.
Deanna, the online sleuth from Don't Fuck with Cats,
nice,
is in there. I won't spoil anything about.
Let me just say this: if anyone's gonna fucking suss out who the mole is, it's gonna be Deanna from.
Yeah, you'd think that. You would think that.
Well. Then okay. Don't Fuck with Cats. It's so funny. Remember, like, Don't Fuck with Cats, it's like they have the word fuck in it. And we've talked to many directors on Netflix who've told us that they wanted to give their titles things with swears in them, and like network has ultimately been no.
Yeah, the Woodstock one was going to be Clusterfuck.
Yes.
And
the gut one was going to be something about
Shitstorm.
Shitstorm.
Shitstorm, yeah. But they got away with F.K cats.
Yes, F asterisk.
We're going back to January 6th, 2020.
Not 2021.
No. Just, oh man, the stuff that happened like immediately following.
Oh my goodness.
Like a month later, we were all inside.
We didn't know. And so this was like right before Tiger King came out and got viral. This was the viral thing people were talking about. Don't fuck with cats. Let's take a listen. Moving on.
In the seedy underbelly of the internet, there's an unwritten rule, Rule 0. Don't fuck with cats.
Netflix's latest documentary is its most provocative yet. In Don't Fuck with Cats, The Hunt for an Internet Killer, we follow a gang of armchair detectives looking for the person posting videos of animal cruelty.
It was the worst video I've ever seen.
He needs to be stopped immediately.
People went nuts. So we started looking. He could have been anywhere on the planet.
This person wants to play a game of cat and mouse, and I'm up for that.
While the internet sleuths scan the world to find their suspect, the cat killer taunts and threatens them. But before law enforcement takes the virtual manhunt seriously, the mystery man turns his violent depravity on an unsuspecting college student.
My mind doesn't want to believe it's true.
These are the things, the telltale sign of somebody that's going to become a serial killer.
Don't Fuck with Cats is not explicit in its depiction of animal cruelty, but has some extremely difficult scenes to get through. The film is also a tribute to armchair detectives everywhere. It's also a cautionary tale about the inevitability of escalating violence in some criminals. Now, we are going to be talking about plot points for Don't Fuck with Cats, so to remain spoiler-free, go to the time code listed in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, first of all, we have to talk about the most important kind of point in this documentary that I know a lot of our listeners are already talking about, and a lot of people who've seen it online have already talking about. And something, Kevin, that I talked about with the director of the documentary for that Netflix podcast was the choice to include any of the scenes that sort of hint at the real videos that were posted online by this guy in which he killed cats. My take is that I can't watch anything with cruelty to animals. As you know, Kevin, I left the room several times and you had to call me back in. Mm-hmm. And there are actually tools online now. People have tweeted about what minute stamps you need to get through to sort of skip those, even those like stills. But my take is that this is what activated these armchair detectives. So it's important, I think, for the audience to at least understand what it was that they saw. Laura, I know you had a very hard time with this part of the documentary. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that they, that is what motivated them. I didn't even want to watch this. I had to steel myself up, and then I'm watching it. And Fireman Ken left the room. He was like, "Fuck that! I'm not watching this." We saw some. I wish we had seen less. It's really hard to watch, and I think it's one of those things that we've talked about before. Is what, and I saw some of the people in our discussion group talking about it, why is it harder to watch animal cruelty than it is to watch cruelty, or where people are victims?
Because they don't know. Because I think it's harder to watch a helpless creature that doesn't have any sense of what's happening to it. That's, I think, psychologically more difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I think that animals are sort of, they give you their devotion, and they don't know that there's this level of cruelty. They don't have that awareness, and they rely upon you. And it is just... So I will tell you, I tuned out for about half of this entire series because I was just I just couldn't even listen to them talking about it. And then, I saw somebody posted here's how you can get around watching the parts that are disturbing. And I was like, it's every other minute is disturbing, even though they're not showing that much. I mean, they have the snake scene. We have the carrying around dead kitten scene. I'm like, I had to watch a Disney movie when I was done with this. It's just really hard to watch. And I understand why they did it. But I think for people that are hardcore animal people, I don't know,
But Laura, don't you understand that the people like John Green and Deanna are heroes, are also hardcore animal people, and that's what activated them?
Oh, no. And I that was the thing I said, is I did not want to watch this, but those two, I was first of all, good for them, because I think they did a way more thorough investigation than the police ever would have done in this case. Analyzing, whenever Deanna went on that vacuum forum to find out the yellow vacuum thing. And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, you know what? The police wouldn't have done this. They would not have put this much effort into this. So, I mean, good for them for helping to catch this guy. But it was just, and I have to say, and I loved how they showed her and they showed them logging into Facebook. Yeah. And did anybody notice how long John Green's password was? It was
John
30
Green's
characters.
Quote John Green.
Yeah, I have an actual question about John Green. Okay, is this somebody who didn't want to use his real name, but he's on camera doing in-person interviews? How does Kevin? You're a journalist. How does that work?
You just read. You just take it.
All right. So, Kevin, I know that you also had thoughts about the sort of choice to show Deanna's reaction instead of.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I think that was a better way of doing it, which was to, instead of show the video, was to show her reaction to the video. And you do get to hear the audio, which is the vacuum cleaner, which is much. It is rough. It is not explicit. It's not super graphic, but it is enough that it is disturbing. I am not as sensitive to that as other people are, but it also was very difficult for me to get through that. And I'm like, it was very suspenseful and not in a good way. There was also, later on, there was a shot of one of the kittens dead. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if they needed that.
No, they needed that. There's a lot. There's a lot that I probably would have cut.
I do think there's a lot of times when you do stuff like that can be graphic, whether it's police camera stuff. They go down to at what frame do we stop? How do we get there and we still tell the emotional part of it? We still build the drama, but it doesn't go too far. And, in editing suites, there are arguments over at which frame to stop. I wouldn't be surprised if the demand was there for a recut.
I mean, I think it was important to show as much as they did of the first one because, the first quarter of it is about them using what they can find on that video to try and narrow down this guy.
Exactly.
And if they're just describing the video or I guess they could show stills or something, but it just wouldn't be the same thing. It's here's this video. What can we learn from it? And the answer is actually a fair amount.
Yeah. What kind of outlet? What about the poster? What about the bedspread? What about the vacuum?
That was Russian speaking.
That was felt. Yeah.
The doorknobs from Lithuania. That was the favorite part of mine.
Now, Toby, a big theme of the documentary is, and this is something that I think Bear Brook to some extent is about as well, about armchair detectives, these sort of cyber detectives who form these social circles online and who do, in the case of these two people specifically, very detailed, kind of ethical and responsible real detecting and detective work using legal and data-driven methods Of course, we then get a glimpse in the documentary of how that can go really awry when it was sort of in that larger Facebook group and the groupthink of it and the biker vigilante animal guys sort of like messing shit up for them. Toby, what did you think of these portraits of these, responsible, that's the only word I can put it, but armchair detectives and those bigger questions that the armchair detective community brings to light?
Well, when you said something about armchair detectives everywhere at the start of this, I was like, I don't know. I kind of feel like this showed the good and the bad of it. And the good of it seemed like it was a very small percentage. I mean, they say they had like 1,000 people on their Facebook investigation page or whatever, and they had to whittle it down.
Yeah, once they got like 15 people that was responsible again. It has to be a small group.
So it's a small percentage who are actually either doing it seriously or responsibly or some combination of that stuff. But for them, I don't know how you have a full-time job, do all that stuff, and also sleep.
Yeah, but that's exactly what happens. I don't know if you listen to Bear Brook, but Rhonda Randall, who's an amateur sleuth who finds people, has a full-time job, does this. Becky Heath, who helped solve the case, is a librarian for an investment firm full-time, very challenging, demanding job, and then spends 10 additional hours a day doing this data research online. It really is an obsession, I think, to this community of people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I think you can find a blueprint for how these things ought to be done, which is you do all this stuff as intensely, but also in a legal way. And then when you've got what you think is a solution, you turn it over to law enforcement. And hopefully they listen.
Yeah. And in their case, the first set of cops didn't listen and didn't care, even though they had the location of the guy. And the second set of cops were better, I think. The Montreal
But it's hard to, but I mean,
Toronto one was on vacation.
But how do you evaluate this stuff? I mean, I'm sure they must have sounded nuts when some cop gets this thing, oh, it's this guy and, this, that, and the other thing. He's probably like, okay, I'll throw that on the pile, but there's no reason why I would spend any more time with that in particular than anything else. It wasn't until some of that stuff checked out that people were like, oh, okay, now I see. So, and I think that would be the frustration is because the people who do it are obsessed. They come across as obsessive when they're talking to people in authority. And that's not always a good way of impressing your seriousness.
Imagine being a cop and getting a folder with 20,000 files on it, from a person who's not a professional investigator that has. But I have to tell you, Luca Magnotta in particular, the killer in this case, it's without that research, he'd be so hard to pin down. I mean, this is a person, just as an example, who had hundreds or thousands of fan websites about himself that he created and maintained online. He had that whole
the rumor that he was
dating Carla Homolka and that he was interviewed by a journalist about it. He probably started the rumors himself. He invaded this investigative group and, sent Deanna videos of her workplace, which, who knows if he actually went there and took them himself or not. But this is a busy guy who was getting a lot done for years before he even made these videos and came on the radar. He clearly was a very complicated character. And it's almost like the record keeping and file keeping of him. There's no other way to track him besides that. You know what I mean, Laura? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, no, he was really quite adept at not only staying ahead of them, but also toying with them as this was taking place and almost seemed to sort of revel in that attention that he was getting. So it was just amazing that when they showed it was Deanna's computer and she was going through all the individual images that they had made, still images from the video. But when you're seeing how she had organized the files in this case, you're like, my God, just the amount of work that went into this. But, I have to tell you this, we have a cat caper going on in my town right now. And I'm afraid that the people that are going to the police are going to sound like this. Some lady has been trapping people's cats and going over a few towns over and releasing them.
Really?
So not even trapping them. Yeah, not even trapping them and taking them to the SPCA. And so this woman I know, last year, her cat disappeared for 3 weeks. It was an indoor-outdoor cat. Finally, they found it a few towns over. Some family had taken it in, and they're like, how the hell did our cat get over there? And so they had this whole thing of like, maybe it got in a truck and got over there or something. Well, this week, her cat goes missing again. She finds it in a trap in this lady's backyard, and the lady has a sign up where she's been keeping how many numbers of how many cats she's trapped.
Oh my God.
Of course, there'd be a lower bricker tie-in somehow.
Oh,
She needs to
I'm
go to
all
jail
over
this
it.
week.
I'm going to go take this lady down because I'm like, what the fuck? But as I'm listening to watching the show, I'm like, take my cat, motherfucker. I'm like, watching it. I'm like, seeing how these people could be coming across a little bit like are these people legit? Are they crazy? There is something to be said for that when you get emotional about something where it is something like this that you're particularly invested in seeing through.
All right. So Luca subsequently posts another horrible video, 2 horrible more videos of cat cruelty that the team sort of looks at and investigates, the one with the snake and the one with the bathtub. We won't have to get into details.
Except there was another set of hands.
Yes. I know exactly who that set of hands belong to. Should I just tell you guys?
It's not Manny?
No. It's the person it's whoever it is who owns the snake. Like literally, this guy probably went on Craigslist and put out an ad I'm looking for somebody who has a snake that can come to my house and let me feed something to it or whatever. There's probably a little marketplace for that, just like there is for every other fucking weird thing on the internet.
Because he didn't have a snake.
He didn't own a snake, so that's the snake owner, right? It's not Manny Lopez.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
And that is a thing because my neighbor just got rid of his guinea pigs. And you can't put anything like that on the internet because the people with snakes will come take your guinea pigs or and they'll feed them to the snakes.
Exactly. Anyway, so mystery solved.
Okay.
That's what happened.
What the hell's going on here?
I'm solving
We
the
got cat
mysteries.
abductions. We got guinea pigs being fed to snakes.
You can't be too careful, Toby.
So, Toby, the documentary really does take a turn at the end of episode 1 and into episode 2 with the murder of June Lin in Montreal.
In the previous videos, the object on the bed were cats. In this video, it was an actual person. And I'm like, what the fuck?
This is a very now different kind of investigation. We actually get dropped into a police investigation at this point and hear from some of the detectives in Montreal about their shoe leather work in tracking down Luca Magnotta.
Behind the suitcase, there were many, many garbage bags. In total, there were 33 bags. But I noticed a red brownish substance that was dripping down under the trash bags. I had the feeling it was blood.
What did you think of this part of the documentary? Sort of talking to that lady detective, also known as a detective, by the way. That was super sexy. Sorry. And she sort of talks about, going into the apartment and the smell of blood. And you hear all this real good, cop shoe leather stuff. I thought that was a big turn in the documentary. And it kind of, to me, picked up steam at that point. What did you think?
Yeah, I don't know if it picked up. I wasn't feeling like the first episode was very boggy. I stayed interested in it, but it does change course. And, one of the questions I had kind of at the end of all of this is, in the end, these internet sleuths, were they as critical in finding? I mean, wouldn't he have been found anyway? Didn't they figure this all out without the internet stuff? That was just sort of like a side story. But it is. I mean, it's interesting. And it's, in this day where there's so many security cameras and it's just, you're tracked. I mean, I don't know how much, in Durham, New Hampshire, I don't know if everywhere I go here is tracked, but in these cities, there's so many security cameras and all these businesses facing inward and outward and stuff that it's possible to recreate pretty carefully who's coming in, who's going out, what they're carrying, all this stuff. I thought it was interesting. I thought the detective, it was interesting where she does get emotional at one point, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, Claudette Hamlin. She's the detective.
Yeah.
They initially believe that Luca is the victim. But then I think that they do a really good job of painting a full portrait of June Lin, the victim. They have his best friend in the documentary, and he's not just a detail that they leave hanging. That part of the story is fully fleshed out.
Can I say something about Toby's point?
Sure.
I think that you can't say whether or not they would have caught him without the armchair detectives, but they did give the cops a name right away, which is why they were able to okay, now it's a manhunt, which is the whole episode 3. Will they eventually have found out that was it? I mean, perhaps. But, I mean, that was the advantage. And who knows how long it would have taken a detective to find the video, one lunatic, one ice pick, if they weren't looking for it specifically. You know, so I think you do got to give them some props.
Can we talk about Luca's mother?
Ugh.
The animal activists, in my opinion, they're a disgrace. They're crazy. Acting like high school children, using the internet to destroy somebody. They're so inquisitive and yet so naive. Like, if you really want to be a wannabe investigator, find the whole story. Because, guys, you're after the wrong person here. There's someone else responsible here.
The Nile is not just a river in Egypt.
I have a lot of thoughts about Luca's mother because, first of all, the fact that she sat down and gave this interview is incredible. Clearly, Luca's upbringing was not great, and she's probably part of that story, right? And she sort of talks about his, sex work and his working in, in porn and all that stuff very cavalierly. And then also talks about the potential that he committed these crimes, killing these cats and this person, very cavalierly. She's a really unusual character. Laura, what did you think of her?
I wanted to punch her.
Really?
But I tried. She made me so angry because I was just like, and I kept trying to say, like, be kind. It's her son. Like, imagine how you would feel. Like, she's trying to find a reason why he would have done this. But the level of denial that she had of everything that he was involved in, and the way that she just bought his lies about Manny, I'm like, it was just ridiculous. Even when it came out that, like, Manny wasn't even a real person, she's still hanging on to this Manny bullshit. I did think it was interesting that she sat down and talked. And I do think that it did, in like listening to her talk, I definitely did have that sort of sense of like, well, there's a little more to the story here of why this guy is so messed up. But I still don't feel like I had that extra piece as to what then turned him into this really violent serial killer and cat killer. But it also said something, the fact that she did sit down, because it seemed like that level of denial and belief in him was still so strong that she felt like she's going to set the record straight. So I just was getting really angry as I was listening to her. So I had to kind of tune her out after a while.
Toby, I think, feels a little more kindly toward Luca's mom. What are your thoughts, Toby?
Well, I don't, what do you do if it's your kid? And I think my sense of her is that she saw him as a victim in that he was, bullied. I mean, he's not a big guy. When you actually see him, he looks like a boy, and I don't know what you expect her to say, really, other than just like turning it around and just being like, my kid is a monster and that's the way it is. I mean, I think if she spent years with him, I'm sure struggling, who knows? I mean, maybe she's got her own sort of emotional problems or whatever, but it seems as though struggling for years with her son being a loner, an outcast, being bullied, and then, having this dream to be an actor that doesn't come through for him, and then having to fall back into prostitution and porn and stuff like this. And it seems like it's this tragic, narrative arc basically of his life. And so it's not hard for me to see a mother, and who knows what's going on with the father, but she's certainly like portrayed in this as being sort of a lone figure, seeing this sort of animal cruelty stuff as being a product of his being victimized, and believing him when for years, he's talking about this guy, Manny, and he gives, to both, I would assume her, but also the shrink, this list of all the stuff that Manny has done to him. I mean, he makes
the lawyer? You mean the lawyer in New York?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry,
hires?
The lawyer. Yeah.
The one who, quote, looks like Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Maybe if you squint real hard.
So I guess when I was watching her, I was like, this is like a tragic situation for her. And I don't know if you can expect parents, especially parents of kids who they see as being basically lifelong victims, to be able to see clearly their children's capacity for violence or
sociopathy or whatever.
Yep.
Kevin, episode 3 of this documentary turns into a Bourne film, right?
Yeah,
it's a chase film.
It becomes a chase movie, yeah.
What do you think of that episode, and what do you think of sort of the way the documentary handles it? And finally, what do you think of the guy in the Berlin Internet Cafe who's the hero of this whole damn thing?
Oh, yeah,
I love
him.
that guy. Oh, my God, I love him.
Well, I'll just say I think like the 3 episodes have distinct personalities. The first one is sort of this procedural. The second one is like a police investigation, kind of putting that together. And the last one is sort of this chase. So as far as the internet guy, yeah, just go back there and get him.
And then like 30 cops come running into the store because they happen to be driving by in a van. But Laura, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I was going to say my favorite part about that was when he's like, I think that's the guy. And by the way, I love he's got 2 monitors because he's like serious about his news. And then he's like, I think that's the guy. So then he has this little ruse to go up and like move the trash can and empty the trash to get a better look at him. I'm like, I have totally done that. Like I do that in restaurants all the time where I'm like Ken and I'll be like, what's going on with that lady over there? And I'll be like, hold on, let me pretend to go to the bar or the bathroom and I'll go see. So I really felt like I loved this guy.
Camaraderie.
Yes.
Laura, I got to tell you.
This is really Laura Bricker's greatest hits.
There were so many
This
people
episode.
in this documentary that made me, I mean, honestly, Deanna, I was like, Laura Bricker could be her. John Green, I'm like, Laura Bricker could be him. Internet cafe guy, I'm like, Laura Bricker.
Yep.
Lady detective in Canada, Laura Bricker. I just
Yep.
kept thinking, Laura, I knew that the
I'm
animal
everywhere.
parts would be hard for you.
Luca, Toby.
I'm not fucking Luca. Oh, God.
So, like, do we think that Luca Magnotta is an insane sociopath who planned this whole thing, layers and layers of lies for years?
No, he's just misunderstood. Of course he is.
Yeah? Is that what you
Yeah.
think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard. It's really hard to imagine another answer. Toby, what do you think?
Well, I guess the question is he insane or is he scheming? Because I think if you were like, if your description of him was, this is a guy who became so entrenched in his favorite movies that he tried to recreate them with real, human victims, that seems like a psychopath, right? From like a classic psychopath in a movie.
It's like an 80. It's like just like those bad movies in real life.
Right. So that to me would be like, on the face of it, it just sounds like he's probably deserves some psychological profiling to see if he's got it together to stand trial. But that's certainly not the way the people in the documentary feel like it is. As a matter of fact, they use all that stuff as evidence for him being sane.
Yeah.
It's like, well, he planned all this stuff out, so he must be sane that he spent 2 years. And to me, it's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a weird way to spend your time.
Evidence
if you're sane.
of sanity or not. So I don't have any strong feelings. Like, I don't feel like I have the answer to it, but it just kind of seems strange that they're throwing out this kind of seemingly sort of insane stuff as being proof of his sanity. And I was like, I don't know.
Well, he clearly has a personality disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the question, in Canadian law, I don't know how close it tracks with U.S. law on this, but as far as, did he know the consequences of his actions? Did he know what he was doing was wrong?
He knew to wear a wig on the plane so he wouldn't be seen.
I mean, he did flee.
Yeah.
He certainly did have a plan, and I mean, all the little stuff.
But that insanity stuff doesn't probably track anyway, because the insanity, like legal definitions, like you have to know consequences. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
it's like there are plenty of insane, psychopaths or whatever that like also know that it's bad. They just don't care. Yeah. That's not the same thing, right?
And he was clearly so smart about it. I mean, that's the thing. If you look at like whether or not it was all premeditated and planned out, just the level of planning that went into eluding capture, fucking with the people in the Facebook group and messing around with them, doing the fake all the stuff that he did with all of his websites and creating this whole persona. I mean, he was very smart. And I think that's the part that's hard to sort of reconcile with somebody who would be considered like legally insane. Like, how could he have like the mental wherewithal to plan all of this stuff out if he's insane and not fit to stand trial type thing?
Right. All right. So final question before we review this documentary. At the end of it, Deanna makes a pretty scathing statement about sort of herself, people who watch true crime. I'm just going to play a clip of that right now.
Did we feed the monster or did we create it? And you at home watching a whole fucking documentary about Luca Magnotta. Are you complicit? Perhaps it's time we turned off the machine.
Final thoughts. Laura, what do you think of what Deanna had to say there? Does it ring true or not?
Well, there is that. And, that is definitely with this sort of uptick in true crime documentaries and podcasts and media. On one hand, it's the people who are like, hey, I'm watching it. Like my friend Marilyn, good old Marilyn Markey, by the way, I love Marilyn, my future self, who watches these shows, Dr. Death, as you know, so that she can avoid becoming a victim of a crime. So there is that side. But then there's a side where it's entertainment. And so, there is something to be said for that.
What do you think, Toby?
At the end, I was kind of just wondering what's the point here, like, of the entire documentary? Like, is there some larger point that they're trying to make, or they're just like, oh, this is a fucked up story that we've got a lot of good interviews and a lot of video and we can tell in kind of a suspenseful way? Yeah, I guess. That we're all complicit. If you kind of buy the idea that what he really wanted was notoriety, and a way of getting notoriety is to do these really kind of fucked up things and have people find out about them, then yeah, by making this documentary, like, you're totally complicit in that. And then as the audience, like, you're not going to make a documentary for no audience. Yeah, I guess you're somewhat complicit.
And then are we complicit reviewing this documentary that they made about that for the other audience?
But I think the thing is, they kind of dropped that thing in, like, right at the end. I mean, I maybe I'm being overly, like, critical of it or whatever, but it seemed like that kind of was dropped out of nowhere.
But Deanna said it. The documentarians didn't make her say it. She did say it on her own, and they just chose to include it. And I will say the one thing we talk about, why was this made? Something that I didn't know, because I only knew some things about this case, not others. All that stuff about Manny and the conspiracy theory around him creating all this stuff from movies, that's new. That was not in the investigation. The police didn't know that, had never kind of come out before. Like, the documentarians discovered that through their interviews and through talking to the lawyer. Like, they actually were able to put that together. So they actually broke
that's
some
pretty
news.
wild if that's the case.
It is.
Yeah.
It is the case. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Kevin, what are your thoughts about what Deanna had to say at the end there?
Well, first of all, I think that was really great that they bring the whole Basic Instinct thing in, those discoveries, because it ended up being a very nice surprise for the viewer at the end, where you think he's been captured and that's the end of sort of the story. And so to have that other stuff thrown in is good. I think, though, like, that aren't you complicit turning into the camera, I think that's the height of vanity.
For Deanna or the filmmakers?
For the implication is, were it not for the true crime industrial complex, this guy would not be a killer. That isn't true.
It's not the way it works.
It just isn't true.
He would have been sick in a different way and done things in a different form.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to say, well, maybe if there were no YouTube, that he wouldn't do videos.
Ted Bundy didn't have the internet.
It's like blaming Al Gore.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, his first, cat video got a lot of response. And is that the kind of thing that he's been looking for? Yeah, I mean, that's obviously all that attention and all the other things, the media interviews and the rumors and my life is...
Yeah, he did that first before he did the cat.
That was all part of his personality disorder. So to, kind of turn, I'm like, oh, well, that's cute. But I mean, I'm not buying it.
So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Roe. If you've heard of Ozempic or Wegovy, you've probably heard three things. They're effective, but they're expensive, and they're hard to get. Well, that's where Roe comes in. Through Roe, you can access prescription compounded GLP-1s with the same weight loss ingredient as brand name GLP-1s at a fraction of the cost. Roe has compounded GLP-1s in stock now. If you qualify, your medication ships in just 1 to 4 days. Don't have time to schedule a doctor's appointment? No problem. With Roe, you can see if you qualify from the comfort of your own home. So go to roe.co/CWO.
CWO.
Membership starts at $99 for your first month. Medication costs are separate. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO.
Go to ro.co/safety for black box warning and full safety information. Compounded medication is not required to and does not receive FDA review or approval. Prescription only. The medication must be paired with diet and exercise modifications in order to achieve stated results. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Quince, my favorite. Oh, my God, my favorite.
Yeah, so...
That's where this is from.
This is Quince?
Yes. I'm literally wearing a shirt from Quince right now.
It's short sleeve, though.
It's short sleeve.
But it's not really great for autumn. And now we need to make the shift. By the way,
yeah.
How was that summer we just got through?
Amazing.
Yeah, a little eventful. So now it's time to sort of put summer behind and move on to fall, which is always kind of a challenge, like for your closet.
Not for me when I have Quince.
You can get great deals on things like cashmere sweaters.
Hell yeah.
$50. Pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and so much more. And the best part is that Quince items, they're priced about 50 to 80% less than similar brands, but they also work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes.
You know what I love?
I'm going to rub your shirt here.
This is like
in an appropriate place.
Lightweight, gauzy cotton shirt. I love that they show you like how much it would have cost elsewhere and like why they've priced it the way they price it. And so you know exactly why you're getting the value that you're getting. But then when you get it, you're like, this seems way more expensive. Their cashmere sweaters, by the way, gorgeous.
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials.
Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime. Moving on. So, Kevin, this is a story you really wanted to sink your teeth into.
Yeah, just like I love sinking my teeth into a great meal from HelloFresh.
Oh, yeah, you do.
HelloFresh handles most of the prep, making dinner to the table easier and faster than ever. And it's especially important as we're getting ready to go back to school.
Yeah.
And, you are doing all sorts of things, rushing around, getting the kids to their after-school activities. It means less time to prepare for a meal. But HelloFresh's Build-A-Plate meals are designed to let every member of your household create their perfect plate. So no more making multiple dinners to satisfy everyone on just one meal with so many ways to enjoy.
Really?
Now, Rebecca, you know that we are about to head out on a business trip.
Yeah?
So we're going to be away from home for a couple of days. So what I did is I arranged for that week that we're away to get two-person meals.
Okay.
So that Teddy, who's going to be home house sitting and watching the dogs, he can make his own HelloFresh meals, right?
Yep.
So we know he's eating something good. He can prepare it himself. And to be honest, he probably can do both servings.
And Kevin, Teddy's a big kid. He's a grown-up.
He's a grown-up.
But if we had little kids, listen to this.
Yeah?
For a limited time, kids eat free.
Oh!
You can go to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
Crime Writers Kids.
To unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for the next 2 months while the subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
Crime Writers Kids.
Well, let's do what we do. Let's review the Netflix documentary with the greatest name that's ever been, perhaps, in a Netflix documentary, Don't Fuck with Cats. Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you. Thumbs up or thumbs down for this 3-part series?
I don't know. I feel very conflicted about giving it a thumbs up because I have such a hard time with animal cruelty. So I'm going to go with thumbs sideways just because I don't want to watch anything where cats, dogs, any animals are injured, especially like this. But I will say there are some characters in this that were heroes that really, internet sleuths that saved the day, along with, I did kind of like the motorcycle gang people that were fighting for the animals. So it is an interesting story. I had a hard time with the cat angle of it, so I think I just as soon would have not watched it.
What about you, Toby Ball? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Don't Fuck with Cats on Netflix?
I give it a thumbs up. I think it's well made. I think it's basically got smart takes on everything. I think they do enough showing sort of the ways that these sort of amateur investigations can go off the rails to kind of counterbalance the one sort of successful group. Because again, I have got real reservations about sort of turning Armchair Detective sort of into into heroes in general, but in this case, it seems to, for these two people, it seems to be accurate. It's super dark, but I kept watching, and a thumbs up.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm also a thumbs up. I think it's quite the feat that they took a video from YouTube and were able to eventually get to the guy's name and his apartment without doing the thing where, there was a direct line from the IP address to his phone. I mean, to just start piecing it together, that's quite an achievement. I'm like Toby. The armchair detective stuff kind of like, I roll my eyes at that. But you got to give it to them. They got the name of the guy, and they basically helped capture a would-be serial killer because he would kill again and again, no doubt, based on what he did in this case. So I think it's a really fascinating real-time look at the development of a serial killer. The name is funny because it does throw off a little bit of what the story is about. Don't fuck with cats. Rule 0 of the internet. Not rule number 1, but rule 0. Don't fuck with cats. It's an interesting name. But I just wonder, is this about cats?
Yeah.
Or is this about a serial killer?
Yeah, I'm also a thumbs up. I will say that the fleeting view of the cat scenes is incredibly difficult. I had to leave the room several times. However, I really am... I don't want to say I'm changing my mind because I also have concerns about armchair amateur detectives. However, having worked in a newsroom where an armchair amateur detective helped solve a decades-long case through her diligence and work and responsible use of that information, having gotten to know Billy Jensen a little bit and the way he sort of lays out the rules for if you're interested in doing this amateur sleuthery, here's how to do it right. Here's how to involve authorities. Here's how not to speculate.
Hey, nobody flew to Montreal.
Listen,
I mean, that's...
But they did the Google Street Walk, which
perfect.
Is kind of like flying to Montreal.
No, it's not.
They did some virtual shoe leather. There's a lot of
That's
virtual
fine.
shoe leather. I find this stuff fascinating. I think the characters in this documentary are fascinating. I think Deanna's fascinating. I think John Green is fascinating. I think that, our cops and our, victims, advocates are fascinating. And finally, this is just on its face a fascinating true crime story. This is the reason why we like true crime, is for stories of surprising people doing surprising things, twists and turns and investigations. You take out the cat stuff, this thing has everything that someone who loves good true crime would love. It has everything. It has all of it. It has a chase. It has everything. It has international settings. It has everything. So I really, really liked it. And I was surprised at how much I liked it considering how many times I left the room during the first episode. So big thumbs up for me. Wow, that was fun.
It was. And, like I said, we often turn up our noses at the online sleuths, but
not me.
They came through on this
Who's
one.
we? What do you mean we?
I guess I roll my eyes.
I mean, Becky
armchair
Heath
detectives.
fucking solved the goddamn Bear Brook case. I mean, I roll my eyes at the online sleuths who aren't actually sleuthing, who are just talking. But some of them do some real sleuthery, like these folks. It's been incredible what they've done, right?
Yeah. Well, that's something. And again, if you haven't seen it, there's only sort of one scene where you don't actually see anything, but you know what's happening when they're killing a kitten. But
It's
other
disturbing,
than that, it's disturbing.
but they don't show anything. They
No.
don't. They
No,
just
but
tell
you-
you, they describe it.
They just kind of describe it. Yeah, you can get
You
through
can
it.
fast forward past that part.
Or you can just listen. You've listened to the review. Maybe you're done.
Yeah. It's a good doc though. I really liked it. And it's really fascinating how they caught the dude. Anyway. All right, Kevin, does that do it for us?
Yes.
All right. Well, this show is recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also spend hours online analyzing videos to track down internet criminals
We're just kidding. We don't do that.
Oh, God, no. We don't actually do that shit. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Partners in Crime Media.